Hey everyone, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here. 3I Atlas, this mysterious interstellar object which first was detected in July of this year, speeding into our solar system at about 60 kilometers per second, now is within 2 astronomical units of the sun, meaning it's closer to the main engine of energy and life in our solar system. And as a result of this proximity to the sun and its very fast velocity, it has started to rapidly expand with its gas coma, which is actually a mixture of dust, gas, and plasma. It's a complex dusty plasma. In addition to this, it has started to brighten rapidly. So now it's around an apparent magnitude of 12, and this is deviating significantly from the expected light curve of 3I Atlas. So in fact, this interstellar object, as it makes its perihelion, and for the next couple months, may be much brighter than expected. There is some discussion as to why it's undergoing this rapid brightening and some of the technical jargon and understanding behind this. It depends on the camera aperture and whether this is the coma expanding or whether we're seeing greater sublimation from the nucleus and new elements and molecules sublimating. We'll go into all that in this video, but in general, 3I Atlas is getting closer and closer to the sun day by day, therefore to all the planets in the inner solar system. It's traveling incredibly fast, which means that it's undergoing this sublimation process much faster than most normal comets would in the solar system. So as it gets closer to the sun, you have new elements start to volatilize and influence the makeup of that gas plasma dust coma that is surrounding it. And it appears that this brightening is coming from the nucleus itself and not necessarily from the coma. There is some uncertainty there. A lot of these observations as to its apparent magnitude, its brightness, come from people making observations here on Earth, amateur astronomers, and some more professional facilities. But in terms of the big telescope facilities, we don't have any imagery from them for September. The last imagery that we had was back in August. And so we are a little bit behind as it relates to super high powered and high definition imagery on 3I Atlas, specifically from Hubble and also from James Webb. And it's getting harder and harder to capture good photos of 3I Atlas because it will be performing its perihelion on the 31st of October, but on the 21st of October, it's performing a superior conjunction, meaning that we will have the Earth, the Sun, and 3I Atlas in a line. And so it's going to be blocked by the glare of the sun, and it's getting closer and closer to that limit threshold of detection. So time is running out. The next thing that we have coming up is a close flyby of Mars on October 3rd, and multiple reconnaissance orbiters and probes on Mars and around Mars are going to point towards 3I Atlas to take specific measurements on it in terms of its brightness. Hopefully we can constrain the size of its nucleus using some of these photos, also a spectrum analyzer and more. So October 3rd is rapidly approaching. It is flying in at incredible speed, therefore undergoing different sublimation processes than we are used to at a faster rate. And now 3I Atlas is defying the expected light curve that we would expect based off of its distance from the sun and its overall orbital trajectory. Now, before we look at some recent images of 3I Atlas and its light curve and how it's been rapidly brightening, there is a lively discussion exploring why that may be the case. Is it an actual brightening effect of 3I Atlas? Is the coma getting bigger, or is it due to instrument differences and apertures and stuff? It's a technical discussion, so I will link this thread in the video description. You can read through it yourself. You'll learn quite a bit, as I have, about all this stuff. But in general, it does seem that 3I Atlas, its coma is getting bigger, and it does seem to be brightening to a greater extent to some degree. The exact reason why it's bucking that trend that's expected for its light curve, though, is definitely under discussion, so I'd recommend you give this a read. And here we have the apparent magnitude light curve for interstellar object 3I Atlas as provided by COBS. I will also link this in the video description. Do your own research. So we see that there is this expected increase in the brightness due to this interstellar object getting closer to the sun. It's perihelion. We see that right there. Again, that is October 29th. And then after that closest approach, it will start to get fainter and fainter. And we're really not going to have any good detections of 3I Atlas around this time, specifically October 21st, because of that superior conjunction with the sun. It's going to be blocked by the light of the sun. But we see our actual measurements here in green, and look how right around September, specifically September 7th to the 15th, we see all of a sudden the apparent magnitude leap up. And this corresponds pretty nicely with when 3I Atlas got within 2 astronomical units of the sun. So the history of observations with 3I Atlas is that we picked it up first in the very beginning of July, and we then also able to detect it in some deep sky wide imaging of the solar system before that. And it was displaying this sort of off-gassing and enhanced activity like back at the orbit of Jupiter even before that. And then as it's gone closer and closer, it's been more and more active. Its coma grew to very large, about half the size of the sun as detected by Sphere X. That was a big story that we covered. And now it seems that it's getting even bigger day by day as it's getting closer to the sun. And it's undergoing these changes and this evolution much faster than traditional comets that we have observed because of its extremely high velocity at about 60 kilometers per second, and that is also increasing to 68 kilometers per second approximately for its perihelion, and then it is expected to slow back down as it basically performs that gravity maneuver around the sun. If it does that, not everyone thinks that this is a comet. Some people think it's alien technology or a craft. I'm personally sticking with just it's an interstellar object of unknown classification and designation. Only the third interstellar object we've ever observed. The first one, Oumuamua, was quite strange because it was like this oblong cigar shape. It did not have any sort of coma or cometary activity, flew in from interstellar space and then flung right out. Was that a comet? Seems more like some sort of fast asteroid. And then the second interstellar object that we detected, Borisov, that one was very much like a normal comet, though it did have some unusual characteristics to it. And now this third one, 3I Atlas, is by far the strangest of the bunch. It's not exactly like a comet. It is displaying some unusual characteristics, like its coma is expanding in the sunward direction. It doesn't really have a tail like a lot of comets, like the one that was just discovered recently, C2025 R2 Swan or C2025 A6 Lemon. Both have very nice cometary tails. They're very typical. They're from our solar system. 3I Atlas is not from our solar system. It could have flown in from 500 light years away, 5,000 light years away. It could have been traveling in interstellar space for 1 billion years before it encountered our system now. And the question is why? And we are seeing strange measurements from 3I Atlas now once more, this time with its apparent magnitude. It's much brighter than expected. And we don't know how this is going to change. It's really going to be interesting to see the brightness of 3I Atlas as we go into October, because as we can see, we've definitely changed course on this light curve. So again, it may be due to like differences in instrumentation and wider apertures and more in order to image 3I Atlas, but this seems to be just going exponential. So it'll be really interesting to see, like, will this actually become a visible object, even though it's only cutting just within the orbit of Mars? It's all possible. I'll keep you up to date on what's happening with 3I Atlas if you subscribe to the channel. And here we have another light curve, but this time taking into account some of these technical differences. So here we see these red upside down triangles. This is the apparent magnitude of 3I Atlas if its coma is greater than 1 arc minute across, whereas if it actually is smaller, it calculates down to a lower apparent magnitude. And to be clear, none of this is visible to the naked eye at this moment in time. Every jump in the apparent magnitude, let's say from 16 to 15, is about 2.5 times more light, or 2.5 times brighter. And so to go from 16 all the way to, let's say, 5 is quite significant once you add that up. So it's not at all visible to the naked eye. It's not visible with binoculars. You need a pretty good telescope to see 3I Atlas at this moment in time, which is limiting these observations to amateur astronomers, professional astronomers that have really good equipment. And that is one reason why there is this discussion on that, because the number of data points is limited and there's differences between all these different telescopes. So is it staying near this apparent brightness that is calculated based off of its orbital data, or is it rapidly brightening? That is, again, a lively discussion occurring right now on that thread for the comets group. So again, that's linked in the video description. I'll also link in the thread for Interstellar Object 3i Atlas for cloudy nights, which is an astronomers forum online. You can check that if you want to see latest up-to-date photos of 3i Atlas. Let's check some of those out. And here we have one of the latest images of 3i Atlas of good quality. This was taken by Michael Jäger and Gerald Rhemann in Namibia on September 17th. And you see it very clearly right there. They stacked the images that they took of 3i Atlas. And so as a result, the stars are all basically blurred, but 3i Atlas is in focus and very clear. We see it has this strong green color. And so there appears to have been a chemical composition change as it relates to its coma, because green is produced from very specific elements or molecules. Specifically, C2 seems to be the main molecule that produces this green color in the optical band, visual light like we see, though there are some other combinations that are possible. But the initial data on 3i Atlas did not support an overabundance of C2, so maybe there's some new chemical process that's unfolding on 3i Atlas that's causing it to produce a lot of C2 and therefore glow green. And this could be related to the fact that it's now closer to the sun than it was before. And it hit that threshold closer to the sun. We'll use 2 astronomical units here as a limit, much faster than other objects would if they're flying in from, let's say, the Oort cloud at the very edge of our interplanetary field. So it is glowing green. This is a sunward direction. So it still has this anti-tail, at least in the imagery provided by astronomers using backyard telescopes. This is a pretty nice array that they have clearly, whereas some of the imagery provided by really big telescope arrays showed that it had a slight tail extending in the anti-sunward direction. But this is the direction of the sun right here. Let's check that out. And here's a more technical graphic as provided by the same group out of Namibia. And so we see the close-up of 3i Atlas right there. It's all in black and white. And we see it right there in the center. Again, the stars are all blurred because they stacked the images, but not the stars. And we see our sunward direction. And so this tail is right along the same vector as the sunward direction. Means it's an anti-tail. It's pointing right towards the sun, which is anomalous and not at all what you'd expect from a comet, because comets will go in, they'll fly in towards the sun, they'll start to sublimate, and there's gas and dust that's being produced, and some of that ionizes and it stretches out behind the comet. As it's flying in, the tail is behind it, opposite its vector of motion, but as it swings around the sun and now is moving away from the sun, that tail still stretches away from the sun. So it's actually kind of moving into its tail at all times. Well, here we're seeing this expansion of its coma, the dust and the plasma that's there to some degree, all of it kind of pushing out towards the sun. So this is just another one of these things that's very bizarre as it relates to 3i Atlas in comparison to all the other observations that we've made on comets and things in our solar system. But again, this is from outside our solar system, only the third ever observed. And really, we can take what we've learned from all these other measurements and that knowledge and information and look at it a little bit through that lens. But I think it would be best, just as a layperson and someone who thinks about these things, to really just look at this observationally and not put strict definitions on what this is, because we don't know what it is. We don't know where it came from. Is it a remnant of like an exploded planet? Is it actually a comet from another system that was flung out? Like, how has its journey through interstellar space changed it? All the different clouds of gas and dust that exist in these bubbles, that has an effect on our sun. We know that in the size of the heliosphere. Well, if this thing's been traveling through interstellar space for, let's say, 1 billion years, how has that affected 3i Atlas, its elemental and molecular composition, its structure, its evolution? These are all unknowns. So it's displaying consistently across multiple things, anomalous activity and behavior, doing this weird super close flyby of Mars, and then also Jupiter next year, right along the ecliptic plane, only 5 degrees off in that inclination. It's just super, super odd. And that is why some people believe it's an alien craft. Other people just stick to the fact that it's a comet. I don't know what it is. I do think that we can definitely look at this from a plasma perspective, because some of that gas will ionize and become plasma just because of solar radiation and the solar wind effect. And there will be this recombination rate, but some of it will stay ionized, and it's going to increasingly ionize as it gets closer and closer to the sun. And then dust particles, they pick up these ions and they become charged. So now you have a complex dusty plasma, which in the lab and also observationally behaves in very strange, unusual ways. In many ways are reminiscent of life itself. So you could also start to think of this from a consciousness perspective. What is the consciousness of this interstellar object? And is it flying in for a purpose? Is it scoping out the solar system? Is it communicating with the overall conscious morphic field of the solar system, with us directly? These are all questions that you can think about, that you can meditate on. That's what I think is happening. But that's just my own opinion and belief. So I recommend that if you find that interesting, compelling, or that's resonating with you, to sit with that. Because my thoughts here is that 3I Atlas is some sort of interstellar object. I don't think it's like an alien craft or ship, like in some materialistic sense. But I do think it is a highly organized, complex bundle of matter, energy, and information that's flying in, and it's interacting with our solar system in ways beyond our conventional understanding. And here I've loaded up the position of 3I Atlas in the sky thanks to Stellarium, and this is set for today. And so we have our constellations and our labels also selected. I've turned off the ground and the atmosphere. Right now it's daytime, so it's just below the horizon for where I am in the morning, but we can turn those off and see where it is. It's moving from the constellation of Libra into the constellation of Virgo. And if we go forward to its superior conjunction on the 21st of October, we see that here it's right in the legs of the Virgin. And we see that this is also during a new moon. Here we have our moon, there's the sun, there's 3I Atlas. So we have a significant astronomical alignment on the 21st of October before its perihelion. And so it's going to be in the sky during daylight. And that's why it's so difficult to observe, and becoming increasingly difficult right now as we go back. So we see that there's a bit of distance right now in between 3I Atlas and the sun, and we can turn on our atmosphere and ground. If we go forward in time a little bit, we see the position of 3I Atlas here. Then we'll keep going like this. We see the sunset, and the only time you have to capture it is right after the sun goes down. As we go forward in time, right like this, see how it's getting closer and closer to the sun, meaning it's getting harder and harder to observe. So right now the sun and Mars are getting very close together, and as it's getting closer and closer to the sun, there's just going to be more light pollution, you could say, making observations more difficult. So the observations that we're making right now on Earth are useful, but starting around October, that's going to decrease, and that's why these measurements taken from some of the probes and instrumentation that we have on and around Mars is going to be so useful. And here we have the position of 3I Atlas with its orbit in the solar system, and we see the orbit right there of 3I Atlas. See how close it's getting to Mars? This is set for today, the 20th of September, but if I go forward, you'll see that it has its closest approach to Mars around the 3rd of October, and we see it getting within about 0.25 astronomical units of Mars at that moment in time. And here is the position of Earth, so you can see why it's getting difficult to observe, right? Because it's at a pretty close angle to the sun. It's not like way over in this direction, which would be brilliant, because then we'd really be able to see it quite easily, so long it was close enough to reflect a good amount of light. So this is swinging in very fast to the inner solar system, and it's displaying all this anomalous behavior and activity. So this is a developing story. I'll keep you up to date as to what is happening. Again, check the video description for a lot more information and links that you can bookmark so you can stay up to date in between my video updates. And if you'd like to get your 3i Atlas on and help support the channel, then I have the 3i Atlas long sleeve cotton t-shirt here. It's super comfortable. I love it. Featuring some artwork that was painted by my dad on the back. He is a natural soil pigment artist. And so we took that artwork and I took a photo of it and we added it to this t-shirt there. These are awesome. They're available on my website at www.earthevolution.com. I highly recommend you check them out if you want to get your 3i Atlas on. With that, thank you all so much for watching. Wishing each and every single one of you well. Please smash that like button, help the channel grow, and subscribe to stay up to date with what is happening in our cosmic neighborhood. This is with the Earth, geologic events like earthquakes, volcanoes, geophysical energies like Schumann resonances, also what's happening with our sun, solar activity, space weather. We are in solar maximum right now. There's been a lot of activity in general in 2025 and also last year, 2024. That's all influencing 3i Atlas in addition to the other objects, well, comets rather, that are right now flying around in our inner solar system. So this fall is looking very, very, very dynamic. From that perspective, we cover all that on the channel, as well as more cosmic influences, bring that all together, present videos almost daily. So love to see you here. Have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video.